Hello and welcome to video A10 in this series about autodidactic learning objects. The A series focuses on technical details, and this video, A10, is about checkboxes and boolean variables. My name is Jonas Hall, also known as the Mad Mathematician. So, checkboxes and variables, boolean variables, what are these things? Well, first of all, here we've got a number of points, ordinary points, and I'm gonna start off by typing in a new variable, a equals true, and that comes up as a boolean or logic variable. And the value of a is true. The only other value that is allowed is false. And when a variable is either true or false and nothing in between, it is called a boolean variable. And you can do all sorts of boolean logic with it, and you can construct things with and, or, not, stuff like this. So these are boolean variables. How do you use them? Well, let's take point A as an example. Right click, go into the properties of point A. Go into the advanced tab and say condition to show object, conditional visibility. Let's put A there. A is the boolean variable true. So what does this do? Looks as if it does nothing, but if I type A equals false, it looks as if it disappears. In fact, it hasn't disappeared. We can see it's still there, it's just not visible because this point is, this circle is not blue. And in fact I can't control it because its visibility is now controlled by the logical variable A. So to make it visible again, type A equals true. It sounds like a silly way of making something visible. But there are other things you can do. For instance, a boolean variable can be the result of a test. So for instance, a test could be the question, is B's x-coordinate larger than 5? Well, x of B, that's the x-coordinate of B, is that larger than 5? Well, if it is, let's just hit enter there and see what happens. We get a new boolean variable, this time defined as the result of the x-coordinate of B being larger than 5. This can be viewed as a test or a question, and if it is larger than 5, well then this boolean variable C is true. Right, and if I now drag point B, I can see that when the x-coordinate becomes less than 5, then variable C is false. Okay, so here it's false, and here it's true. Now that makes for an interesting thing. If I go into the properties of point B, in the advanced tab, we have these dynamic colors. Let's put a dynamic color there. Let's say that if, since which that's on, and I could either type if the x-coordinate of b is larger than 5, but I've already done this. It's in the variable c, so I can just type if c. Then I want a red button. I want the red color to go maximum, and if not, I want it to stay out of sight, so to speak. And for the green, I'll just do the reverse. On if c, and I want no green, but if c is false, in other words the x-coordinate is less than 5, then I want the green to come out. And let's put blue at 0. Right, so with those dynamic colors, it's now red and now green. Now put the trays on. And this looks all of a sudden quite interesting. Right? Now this is a very simple example, but this is one way of visualizing the condition that the x-coordinate of b is actually less than or larger than 5. Right, now we've got these white circles here, and you can actually make these visible. Well, you can't make that one visible because that's controlled by the x-coordinate of b. So it's only those logical variables, those boolean variables that aren't controlled but are independent that can be visualized. And they are visualized as checkboxes. This is very interesting, right? They are visualized as checkboxes. So I can click here and make this go true or false, and then that in turn controls the visibility of point A. B doesn't control anything yet. So checkbox is simply the graphical representation of a Boolean variable. Let's see another way of making checkboxes. There's a tool called checkbox here. If we click that one, and then click roughly where we want the checkbox to be, we get a little dialog. Let's have an explanation for it. Let's say show points, and then we're to select which objects will have their visibility controlled by this checkbox. So in fact I can select point C, point D, point E, point F and point G, and then apply this. I now have a checkbox that says show points. I also have a new Boolean value, D. The label on the checkbox is not necessarily the same as the name of the Boolean variable. The checkbox therefore is an object in itself, in a sense. What happens here is that the logical variable has an explanation there, and it's that one that is shown. Now clicking that controls the visibility of all the points C to G. How? Well, because while we created the checkbox, that dialog did something else as well. If we go into the properties of point D, look at the Advanced tab, there's the condition to show this object, and there the boolean variable D is mentioned. So the dialog will administer this, it will place the condition D for the condition of visibility for all the objects selected at once. But this could be done manually or afterwards. So let's say that now I've decided that now I really want A to go the same way as the other points. Right? Go into point A, go into the properties and change the condition to show object to D. That's it. It's now controlled by this checkbox and not by that one anymore. So that's a little bit about checkboxes, conditional visibility, or even dynamic color, and these logical boolean variables. Now, as I said, they can be the result of a test. So really, anything I type here, I could type what's the if the y coordinate of point D is that larger than or equal to the x coordinate of point G. Well, is it? Well, currently it's not. I get a new boolean variable, but as I move things about a bit, I can change this, of course. So a boolean variable can be the result of any test. So in other words, I could, if I want to, control the visibility of point F without having a boolean variable, simply by putting the test itself here. This should only be visible if the x coordinates of the point F is larger than 4. Of course, that's slightly strange, because then as you pull it down, it suddenly goes invisible. And if you let go, it's very difficult to grab again. In fact, you can't. So you have to do something here and change it manually again. I've just lost a point. Now, having checkboxes is a very simple way of changing things. Nevertheless, it can sometimes be easier to understand for an end user if you have a button instead. So how do you make a button to control boolean variables? Well, first you make the button, and let's say we call this toggle. That means switch or change. Toggle points. Now, points are controlled by logical boolean variable small t. So I could put set value, set värde in Swedish. I want to set the value of the small t to be the opposite. If it's true, I want it to be false. If it's false, I want it to be true. And this, in logical terms, is called not. I want it to be not what it is. And with, and here you just use the exclamation mark. That's the simplest way of doing it. Exclamation mark D means not D. So I'm setting the value of D to be not what it was, but the other alternative. And that's a very short script, one line, and do that, and toggle points, whoops, this happens because I've not selected the arrow. Toggle points now toggles the visibility of the points. It actually toggles the value of the boolean variable D, which in turn controls the visibility of the points. But for the end user, this may be easier than this. Maybe. Right, now I'm going to show some advanced examples of how to use checkboxes. So I've got those in another GeoGebra file, which we have here. This looks like a triangle. It is. I've got a number of checkboxes here, but I've done some little tricks with them. So if I check the frame, I get the frame but not the surface. What happened there? I check one and the other one goes away. So really this is a bit like radio buttons. Okay? Radio buttons are buttons where you can only select one of a group. And this first line is a line of those. And I will show you shortly how that works. But I'll just go through what they do first. Notice that if I uncheck surface, it defaults to just points. And if I uncheck that, it also defaults to just points. Which is not exactly standard radio button behavior. In radio buttons you can't uncheck things, but here you can, so you can do different things. Okay, corners A, B or C. Well, I can mark them specifically, and what happened there is that when I check this checkbox, more checkboxes appear. Advanced user interface. Okay, I might as well do that one as well. What about the altitudes? Okay, so those are the altitudes of the triangle, and here again, checking this checkbox makes another one visible. And if I check that one, I get the point. I can now uncheck the altitudes and leave the point on, so to speak. What about orthonormals? Well, same thing there. They seem to intersect in one point. Let's make that visible. What about the medians? Those seem to intersect in one point. And there's actually such a thing as the Euler line that goes through those 3 points. And I can't drag this because this is just a visible ring. The actual points are there, so if I want to drag them I have to make those visible. What about the color? Well, that checkbox makes some input fields visible. So I can change the amount of red to 0, for instance, to make a green triangle rather than an orange one. Okay, so how does this work? Well, all of these checkboxes that control other checkboxes. If we concentrate on this one and have a look in the algebra field, here are the logical variables. Check that one. What happens? Well, we see that the value of u changes. So this is actually logical boolean value u. Okay. What about this one? That's the D1. Go into the properties of D1, go and check the advanced tab, and the condition to show it is u. So a checkbox can be hidden and controlled by another checkbox, another boolean value, just by entering the other boolean value in the conditional visibility field here. So that's how to make things appear one at a time. You can chain these so that one will show another, and that one will show the third, and the third will show the fourth, etc., to make things appear for the student in a logical order. What about these ones? Well, they are a little trickier. To understand them, we have to understand that that one is called N, this one is called W, and this one is called A1. You can't see that, but that's A1. You can see that that's the one that changes when I check it. So N, W, A1. Go into the properties of one of them. And we don't have a conditional visibility, we don't have dynamic color. What we do have is a script. When I check this box, I set the values of the others at the same time. If the value is set to true, then W is set to false. Otherwise, it's set to whatever N was. For this one, if I set the value of this checkbox true, if I check it, then A1 is going to be false. But if this checkbox is false, then A1 becomes true. That's the default thing when, if you uncheck the box, on comes the only points option, which is the A1 option. So here's that script. That's the N. If I look at the W, it looks very similar. It's just changed N and W positions here. And if I look at the A1, it looks slightly different, but basically the same idea. You set the value for the others, and what value you set may depend on if you set it to be true or false. So with simple scripts like that, you can control buttons in quite complicated ways. Obviously, what I haven't actually mentioned here is that obviously this triangle has a conditional visibility controlled by N, etc. This the frame here, this segment C has a visibility controlled by the logical variable W, etc. So obviously all the graphical elements that you want to show needs to be connected to the Boolean variables, obviously. And why do I do this? Well, basically because, if I show everything, it's going to be a mess. with structured use of checkboxes, you can make sure that only those things that you actually want to be visible are visible at any one point. I actually think there's a better choice of colour. So that was everything I had to say about checkboxes and boolean variables.